Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for being here. And I will do a little I did my dissertation many years ago, and since then I also have, as the title of my talk, I have been rethinking what I once perhaps meant. So I think it is interesting to look at this Oslo-Breakfast. How many of you have heard about it before? Can you raise hands? Yes. So perhaps I will talk about something that is very familiar to you, but perhaps we can have another perspective on this very important history, our food history, in fact. So I will start with some general remarks on the topic of the school meal. And as you know, and as I think it's been talking about here yesterday, I couldn't come yesterday. I'm sorry for that. But the Norwegian scheme for the school meal, as a system, an issue, an institution, or however you want to choose to state it, is simply put that the mother, yes, it is. Research shows it is usually the mother that ensures that the children have something to eat packet in their rucksack. This scheme has been strongly criticized and debated for years, with this conference is one example for. Many would like to see this change, and a variety of measures have been proposed. For decades, politicians from both the right and the left in the Norwegian politics have promised changes and continue to make promises and after promises. The core of the matter is that the school, and not, as now, the home, should take care and the responsibility for providing the children sustenance during the school day. That many children arrive at school hungry without so much as the gift from the packet lunch from the mother. You can see it as a gift from the mother. That many children arrive at school even hungry without so much as the gift of the packet lunch from the mother. Creates a range of problems. It opposes social and cultural divisions and leads to inequality. Not least, as the popular song from the 1970s by the Norwegian duo Knutsen and Ludvigsen, that taught us food tastes better when it's served on a plate. The packaged lunch is a problem, has become a problem, a social problem, a disciplinary problem, and an eating problem. It causes poor learning environments, disruption in classrooms, wrong and unhealthy eating habits, that children arrive at school without having eaten breakfast and without so much as a packet lunch is nearly as shameful to admit. It reflects a poor home life, so indeed, if only children were fed at school, preferable a warm lunch at midday, all problems would be solved. And my answer is, or my question is, would they be solved by doing this? What if we were to view this packet lunch as a resource and not as a problem? For even Knutsen and Ludvigsen had to admit that once they have arrived to the third slices of bread, it had already eaten up because it tasted good. So while politicians have discussed and argued, parents are confused and some people have tried to act. Although there are many good initiatives, especially at local levels, to put love and care into providing good and healthy food choices on a daily basis, many of these initiatives come from voluntary association and community groups. The issue of school meals have yet to be resolved. Politicians make promises, but it is still mothers and perhaps also the fathers who ensure that children have something to eat in their rucksacks when they enter the schoolyards. At the same time, and this is important to note, I think, the school day has steadily become more demanding and challenging for teachers. And the small but significant subject, mat og helse, food and health, has not exactly been given high priority, even though it is highly rated in surveys that measure well-being among pupils. The new generation is exposed to learn mathematics and natural sciences, but not food lessons. Despite that, the fact that food lessons and food science in general are gateways to much more than food alone. Indeed, food affects nearly all of our aspects of our life, and the lives of our and the lives, gateway to much more than food alone. Indeed, food affects nearly all aspects of our lives and lives of our children and grandchildren, nothing less. Food is bigger than the plate, as was the name of an exhibition and that was in Victoria and Albert Museum in London just some years ago. And I think it's interesting that the Design Museum have a food exhibition, and they had. And food has a greater potential than we realize. And this is seldom a part of the public discourse. So the issue of the school meal is not just a matter of economics, it's a matter of love and care. So my argument here, which I will return to, is that the issue of the school meal cannot be seen isolated from attitudes and assessments on food in society in general. As the well-known philosopher of science and biologist and feminist Donna Haraway puts it, everything is not connected to everything, she says, but everything is connected to something. And it's very important to look at the something. And what is the school meal connected to? That is an interesting question in my way. So food is not just about receiving, it's not just about receiving, but it is about doing. It's about doing. The Iceland artist Olafur Eilarsson acknowledged this. At his studio, located in the former brewery in Berlin, he invites his staff and visiting fellows to a joint lunch every day. In the introduction chapter of his book, The Kitchen, which is a picture here, which is a collection of his ideas about food and the practices of meals and also features of portraits of his studio, he writes, and here you see, cooking is caring for others. It is a gesture of generosity and hospitality that function as social glue. It emphasizes social relations and translates thought into food, into giving and sharing. When we cook, we both use the world and produce it at the same time. In my view, this quote gives a lot of food for thought. It tells us in which way food works and matters, that food is about what food is about and how food functions and acts and how we act with food. So in my presentation, I will draw special attention to the matter of caring. The argument is simple, that caring must be, ought to be, an important aspect with all of our relation to food and meals, also of our relation to the school meal. And I will exemplify this with telling the story of the meal introduced to all school children in the 1930s, the Oslo-Breakfast. And I will tell the story in here four pictures of 4 lessons of 4 sections. First, it is the pre-story, and that is a midday meal, which was served to children in Oslo and also throughout the world nearly, and also other places in Norway from the 1880s to 1920. And then we have the picture, this picture and this picture is examples of the Oslo-Breakfast and the latest Sigdal system. And the post-war period which lasted from 1945 to 1st of October 1964, when the matpakka, and the meal at school was stopped, and the matpakka was the main meal in the school in Oslo and also everywhere in Norway. And you have to have, sorry for this, but I missed it. Yeah, so this is the story. Det var väldigt dumt. Yeah, there we are. When the Oslo-Breakfast was introduced and offered for all pupils in primary schools in the first period, there was already a meal, and that was the midday meal. The great barracks-like city school building built around 1880s, when the population in Oslo grew dramatically from a small town in the 1850 to one of the greatest, fastest growing town in Europe, among 200,000 inhabitants. And a lot of school building was built. And this school building, they had a dining hall. And here you can see children in the dining hall offering a midday meal, a hot or warm meal in the middle of the day. But this meal was it was an initiative from voluntary, mainly women. And in 1898, the community took over the responsibility. And a man, John Spago, who visited an American activist, socialist, and writer, he was visiting the country abroad, examine how they fed their children. And in Oslo, he said, the meal provide, and this was in his view and how he wrote about it, the meal provide children who desire to able themselves of a nutrition midday meal in respective of their ability to pay. This is how he characterized this meal in the book, The Bitter Cry of the Children, published in 1906. He tells about his experiences and in his view, Christiania, Oslo, the entire cost was met by taxation and has been felt by the Norwegian authorities to be simplest and the best method of dealing with a grave problem, of feeding the children. It avoids the difficulties which inevitably arise when there is a distinct classes to create this meal. And he quotes the saying, where all are equally welcome, none are paupers. He argued, however, that the system fit very well in the Norwegian context with its simple, homogeneous population, but is little suited to be needed of cosmopolitan a nation as ours, that is the US. His observation was only partly true. Here is another picture from another school in Oslo. And when I show these pictures, people always ask, oh, they are so huge portions. And I think that the portions are, you have first a meal, some meat, and then you have a soup. So it is a part of this soup kitchen ideology in a way. But his observation are only partly true, since all were not equally welcomed. In these dining halls, it was two types of guests or eaters, in those who paid and those who did not. The last one, those who did not, had a paper around their neck, like this, telling they were paupers. Diners were free, was part of the poor. Diners free was part of the poor relief. Some even got their leftovers home to feed hungry little sisters and brothers. And here is an experience from a woman from my working class areas, born in 1887. And she says, before meals were for the poor kids. It cost 10 euro. I thought the kids who received free meal were so lucky. They had a paper worn around their neck that was punctured each time they ate. Each time they ate. Sorry for this. But see, each time I ate, and she was not, and what is the end of this quote is that she was not allowed, even though she came from a working class area, she was not allowed to get a free lunch at school because that it was poor relief, and this was a shame for her family. So it shows that this meal was not equal for all. It was two divisions. It was one for the rich and one for the poor. And here you see one school in 1907, and you can see the school building, very Jews and a lot of children. And they had, you can see they were very modern, and they have this hygiene, they have showers and gymnastic, and they also have dining halls. And here you see the children, but they were not equally. Some were paupers. They have this paper around their neck. And the idea about these kitchens was, of course, a soup kitchen. And it was to give most nutrients, most food at a cheap food, most nutrition as cheap as possible. So the idea was economy, not health. And it was this meal that the school doctor, head of the school service in Oslo from 1980 to 1936, Carl Schütz, wanted to change as to the optimal diet. And here you can see in his school canteen the way he did it. His idea was to move the school dinner from poor relief to social hygiene program. But he was not only interested in the healthy food, he was also very interested in how it was served and how the care about the food or the meal, around the meal. It is, of course, when you see it in a more critical way, you can see that this meal is perhaps a very hygienic and very disciplinary, and you can see the white line going up to the Bessa lady, as they were called. But anyway, you can also look at this meal as a way of caring, because Schütz, he was really interested in all the thing around the meal. And it made a great success. And here you can see the meal. What he wasn't want to replace the warm dinner to a fresh new meal. The bread is very important, and the milk and the fruit. In this way, the school children got all they needed. They got the nutrients, and they also got the vitamins. He was a very great vitamins enthusiast, and he tried to change the meal from the dinner meal to his breakfast by doing an experiment. And this is an open-air school in 1926. And here you can see, and this is pictures. He was going around and showing about his experiment. And this was he tried, and these open-air schools were schools where the pupils were perhaps they have some health problem or were poor, so they was not in a normal school day. They were on a very strict diet and strict observation. It was like a laboratory. And here, and I have fresh air and the right food. And here you can see his shirts, and also his pamphlet he wrote when after his experiment is about a revolutionary way of doing a new kind of food, and that is later called the Oslo-Breakfast. He was not giving this name to the meal. And here you see what he did. He did this weight and food experiments, and then he did statistic, and so it was the laboratory, which is the vitamins, and then there was the statistic that was to measure the children, and then it was the clinic, and that was to giving them food. And by this, he tells that this was a very better system, and that the school, the midday meal had never been scientific proven. This meal had. So it was a scientific meal in all its way. And here you can see very soon, this was an experiment in 1926, and very soon he got the city council to agree that they should change the meal at schools in Oslo from the midday meal to a breakfast meal and free for all. So we didn't have two types of guests. Of course, after a while, the politicians, they discussed this back and forth. And in 1935, when the Labour Party got power in Oslo, then it was free for all. And this is a picture from Sagene School in Oslo, in a working class area. And it's sad, I don't know, but it is sad that the man behind and watching or inspect or is school teacher from Sweden. And it also is sad that it is Sweden, the Swedes, they gave this meal the name Oslo-Breakfast. So it is really revolutionized the whole meal system. And Church, he left his position as the head of the school health system in Oslo in 1936 and became professor at hygiene at the University of Oslo, and he died in 1939. But even though his meal got great impact, and in I will show you an example on how they really tried to make this meal not just a school meal in Oslo, but a meal for the whole country. And just when the meal was the meal for the home, they did succeed, and that is what we see now in the Matpakka. And now I will take you to a kind of travel, and this is a slideshow. And this is about milk. It's the milk propaganda of this time. And this is a slideshow that Rolf Bjørnstad, who was employed at Norske Melkeprodusenter Sentralforening, that is now it's Tine. And he was the head of the propaganda office, as was the name at that time, in 1936. And he traveled around in Norway with this slideshow, and now you shall see it. Velkommen til Melkeveien til Helseland. The path of milk to the land of health. I have translated it too. And this goes like this. And you can see what is very interesting in this show, in this picture, is that you can see that the girl and the boy, they travel with modern with aircraft to the city, from the countryside where you grow the food, where you do the food, to the place where you consume it. So it's a difference between the countryside and the city. They come to the center of the city, and here this is a monument. They see that the cow is raised on a monument to the honor of the one that have done our health. Yes, and these children, they are so excited coming to this land of glory, and they see that the boys, they goes in this parade because they will drink milk every day. Because they got strong, and the girls, of course, they are very pretty if they're drinking milk. And this kind of language you can see also in ads at the same time. But there is not only good thing in this country, there also is bad thing, and the bad thing is the unhealthy food. And here you see the white bread, and you can also see that the milk bottle is male milk of police officers. And the bread is put in jail. And here, this is just for fun. That is the sweet. It was not that important. And also the syrup, which white bread and syrup was a very common food among children in these days. And also the coffee drinking. And here you can see the coffee is extremely stubborn. Even a lot of milkmaid of a policeman have to strangle her. And that is also very interesting. And if you can see these pictures, in these pictures you can see that while the milk, which is a female attribute, is now a male. They have changed sex in a way. And that the stubborn coffee is old-fashioned coffee kettle. So this is very, very, very interesting language to analyze in this sense. But what is more important is that he was traveling around with this slideshow all over Norway, he said. And in an interview in 1981, he said he probably reached 90% of all school children with this show. So in a way, you can see how massive this enlightenment, or I mean, it's difficult to use the word propaganda today, but you can see how huge it was. And it's also very interesting that Rolf Bjørnstad and his office, they went to the USA to learn new methods of doing advertisement. So it is American way, I think. And at the end, everybody, the unsound food is in Yale, and everything is happy. And the girl and the boy, they want to be members of citizen of the land of health. And it's very interesting because also in the 50s they had some similar kind of ads or iconography. But in those days, in the 50s, they didn't put unhealthy food in jail, but at museum. Yeah. And then we come to, and this is a massive propaganda, and the children, they got a taste of the school meal, because when Bjørnstad traveled around with this meal, they saw the show, and they got a taste of the Oslo-Breakfast, and they get a brochure back home, so their mothers, or their mothers, could learn to give the children in the home the Oslo-Breakfast, or the perfect meal. But it is interesting, even in the 1930s, there were never all children that applied to this school meal. And even in the school at the labor or the labor class areas, I think in the 1939 to 1940, at one of the 4 of the school in the labor class area, 70% of the children applied to the school. So it was not up to the school meal. So it was not everyone that did it. And so it was, I think, still valued as a poor relief, not as was just a wish to move it from the poor relief into the social hygiene program. And then came the war, and then it became stop. And it's just a little bit, just a little bit note. Here we see the school they were closed during the Second World War, and the school had to find new rooms every day, moved from places to places, even private home. And here you can see a picture of a school meal in the private home, and also some of the what is called the soup kitchen. And that is that in 1942, the hunger started to matter for the school children. And once on once a priest and a school master of a school and representative of the committee, the lady committee, of the Norwegian Lady Committee, who in 1940 started to collect, to send food to prisoners in jail in Germany and in Norway. And in 1942, one of the Lady Committee of Copenhagen, the norske damekomiteen, the Lady Committee, they collected this food and sent it throughout. And in 1942, they gathered together in a bomb room because, yes, you know, and then the head of the school, she said that, oh, the children are now so hungry. It started to feel that they are so hungry. And then the priest and the representative for the Lady Committee, they said, why if we do cook porridge or soup on the Danish food? And they did so. And here you can see, sorry, this is also, here you can see, and now we come back again. This is also some pictures from, you can see how many joined in this Oslo-Breakfast. This is from the 30s. And even at the juletrefest, I don't know what it was called, at the dentist, at the School of Dentists, they got the Oslo-Breakfast on their juletrefest. And also here is the background for it. Very often it's said that this is the background for the matpakke, because at the schools in the district that didn't have this. I mean, Oslo had this canteen and this dining hall, and they had a whole system to change the meal. Out in the country, they didn't have. So then the doctor in a community that's called Sigdal, he come to this idea that he wanted that the children could take the Oslo breakfast as a packaged lunch. And here many say that here is the background for the matpakke. Yeah, and here you can see also this is the number of participants to the school meal in the interwar years, and you see it's never 100%. But in the years just before the World War II, you see that there are many that participate, because the parents have to apply. It was nothing that come from itself. And here is a very nice map of the soup, the Danish soup and the aid from Denmark. And you see it's really many portions of soup that has been provided. And that is what it, and that's what's interesting, because after the war, and the system come up again, then the participants were nearly 100%. And never before so many has participated to a school meal as in the 50s. And here you can see how many slices of bread that has to be cut and to be done to make this kind of meal. And the Oslo breakfast started up again after the war, and that was what I said. It was nearly 100%. Yes, and you can see. I mean, the point is that food is a matter of caring and doing, and someone has to do it. And I think that it's not about having food or receiving food, is also about giving. And the system is, the behind the scene is very, very huge. Yeah. So it was just after the war that the system became very well and also a lot of participants. But what is interesting is at the same time as the pupils joined to the school meal, they also started to discuss the price and the economy, and in this journal for what is have done during the annual journal for the school system, you can see while they discuss the pool or the price of the meal, at the same time, they also give list how many people are employed in the school to do the meal, and at the same time as the pupil join this, at the same time they discuss how many people are going to care for the meal, and what is interesting, in they started. I have a lot of. I have a lot of. It's very interesting to see how many had to be behind the scene to be able to serve the meals. And what is also interesting, and what I think could be very interesting to do research on, is that at the same time as all the kitchen staff just at the different school and in the canteen where they're making food, at the same time as they rise how many they were, at the same time the teachers, they started to discuss who are responsible for the for doing the meal at school, and do the teacher, do they get any compensation for doing yeah. So this was, it started to became a discussion between the organization, the teacher organizations. So at the end, I will just say, I think to conclude, I think it's interesting to see, and I think it's very important. If you go back to the quote of Eliasson, it's very important to look at the school meal not as a problem, but a way of doing food, and not as a problem, but as a way of caring, and also if you look at it as a resource and cultural heritage, we can say that this meal or other practices we do every day have now 100 years old history. So what do we do with history? Do we just throw it away, or do we try to find how we can do it in new forms? So this was, thank you for me.